I went to work, and I decided that I would buy myself a little Volkswagen Beetle, a red one.
Red?
Well, yeah.
Not yellow. My mind is like yellow.
And I got my license, and I started part-time studies.
Wow.
You know, if you go to post-colonial theory, look, we were colonized and things happened. And in post-colonial theory, you say, I accept what happened, that I can never be pure again because I've been touched, you know. And that is not something to be ashamed about.
Yeah.
It's a richness that
Yeah.
was brought. So that is how I see it. Is my diverse roots is a richness brought to my country's history, or to my people, or to all South Africa's people. And also that purity is a myth.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the big thing I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Purity is a myth.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing is, for me, is you young people at the museum, you must determine how it's gonna, bloom like a flower. We had slavery at the Cape. The slaves built the Cape.
Yeah.
These roads that we're walking on, the cobblestones, the quarry there by Greenpoint, slaves carried those stones from there. What do they give us as a monument? A cut-off tree in Spin Street.
Yeah. With blocks.
Yes, the plug under which the slaves were sold. Nobody knows that the gardens is the plantation where they worked. The museum is where they stayed. Sometimes they were so tired when they came from work. They eat the fish and, I don't know, even the rice. They ate it raw.
No time to cook.
What would happen to a child, a teenager that's about to go and explore the world? And what can it do to a teenager to know that my ancestor, ate fish raw? Because he was...
Good morning. And Diana, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah. We just hear that you had a nice breakfast this morning. Just to say, I'm with my colleague here, Matthew.
Yeah,
Nissen.
hello, Matthew.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's one of the researchers within the museum, and a good historian, wealth of knowledge. I've learned a lot from him in the last couple of years, and it's been very interesting. And both of us, we are going to have a nice conversation with you, and it's really around yourself as a person, and also a bit on issues of culture, heritage, and so on. And maybe the first thing that we wanted you to do for us is to quickly introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where were you born? Your Khoi connection, your Irish connection, and tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
Wonderful to have you here. Well, I was born in Worcester. It's a small town about 100 kilometers from here. In 1953, it makes me 72 years old. Yes, I didn't have the best of childhoods, but I was one that always had my eye on my dream. And, after democracy, I became aware of roots are an important part of a person's existence. You've got to know. And so I've asked around my family, my mother, father, who are we? And I came across facts like I stem from the Februaries, and the Februaries were Mozambican slaves. So I got it from my uncle that the Februaries were also called die Masbekers. So our people already started those years with slavery, with the language Afrikaans. So because if you had it in the proper Afrikaans, it would be die Mosambikers. But my people said die Masbekers. Okay, so I stem on the father's side and the mother's side because my mother and my father were distant cousins. Imagine that. And from my mother's side, besides the February, her father was an Elias who came also from the Februaries. But her mother came from Beaufort West. She was born here. She was a Jefta. Her father was Abram Jefta, and he married Sarah Tate. And she was Irish, and they could tell me that. I suspect you talked about you said I must tell you about my Khoi roots, my slave roots, the Februaries. The Khoi roots is the Jaftas, right? Jafta could also be Xhosa, because Jafta comes from both those two cultures. Okay, so it could be been a mixture of Khoi. And because at Beaufort West, remember the area, I researched that way. It's actually where people mixed, yeah. And Sarah Tate, I don't have much information about her. I suspect that she or her family could have come with the British settlers in 1820 and later years. Mm-hmm. So that is what that is how far I came with what my roots are. And well, I went to school in Worcester up to matric, and then I came to Cape Town to study under very difficult circumstances because there wasn't really money to have me, And my saving grace was, check this out, there was no money to pay a part of the Luciesgeld, paying the lodging. And it was there then that the University of the Western Cape, that was 73. Students started getting, active, protesting and all that. And it was hectic, but it was wonderful for me as a youngster to see, And eventually they couldn't cope with our protests and they closed the university. And their tactic was to tell everybody to apply again. We know why, because they would have, just say no to some and yes to some. Yeah, and we decided nobody's going to apply, and we worked it up, and we went to the houses and the areas where the students came from, spoke to the parents and said, don't apply, please. I was very happy. I didn't have to apply. I just had to say, I'm leaving. Because there's not money in any case here. Yeah. So I went to work. I went to work, and I decided that I would buy myself a little Volkswagen Beetle, a red one.
Red?
Well, yeah.
Yellow. Mine is like yellow.
And I got my license, and I started part-time studies at the university. It was difficult. Of Western Cape. It was difficult because the boss, didn't want that. And I had to work extra hours to be able to go to class. But I could eventually finish my degree. I started to work at the university as a secretary, finish my degree, finish my honors. And I sort of finished my master's, but I didn't do the thesis. So, yeah.
Is there a plan on completing it?
But
no.
But you have your honorary doctorate already, so.
Yes, but it's not an academic doctorate, it's an honorary doctorate. Yeah. But I feel that I deserve it.
Definitely. I mean, that for me is like, it's a capping of.
Yeah.
There was a funny story that when we visited Uncle Lionel.
It's Davis. Yeah.
Same thing around, and he said in one of the meetings, this guy came in and said, "Doctor."
Yeah.
But it's interesting how people really it's about the work that they do more than the titles that they. that people will hold on to, and their work speaks a lot than the title that they.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think one thing that we also wanted to have a conversation with you about was around the complexity of your lineage, in terms of your your roots to Khoi, to Mozambique. How is that really, assisting us as a country in accepting ourselves as that we are complex in our nature? Do you think people are able to come up front and say, I feel proud that I am this kind of a person that comes from these different backgrounds?
Yeah. If you go to post-colonial theory, look, we were colonized and things happened. And in post-colonial theory, you say, I accept what happened, that I can never be pure again because I've been touched, And that is not something to be ashamed about.
Yeah.
It's a richness that was brought. So that is how I see it. Is my diverse roots is a richness brought to my country's history, or to my people, or to all South Africa's people. And also that purity is a myth.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the big thing I want to say.
Yeah.
Purity is a myth.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're quite diverse in many ways. We're mixed in many ways.
That's it. And we're still going to mix. And what we see now that we are free,
Yeah.
people have the freedom of
potential.
moving, Matthew. They marry and they have children, and all those restrictions are not there. So that's the great thing about me being a diverse person, having all those roots, and having accepted it. Yeah.
And I think it's quite a common phenomenon within, especially South African context. And if you're looking at Cape Town as such,
Yeah.
and also you go to areas such as Simonstown, for instance,
Yeah.
you find that the narrative of mixed people is quite a dominant narrative, and it's adding value in the cosmopolitan space that people find themselves in.
Yeah.
Do you think South Africans are still kind of find quite stuck in those narrow definitions of purity in many ways?
You see, I think it has changed a lot. But I think also there's a certain section of society that hasn't thought about it properly, but also there's sections of society for whom it serves a purpose, that you keep yourself in that narrow description. And yes, I actually want to refer here a lot to the Khoi and the Khoi activists, just explaining that they are Khoi and not wanting to see those post-colonial effects. You've got to see it. I was mixed. See, yes, I'm Khoi and I'm celebrating it, but there is an English great-grandmother somewhere, and there is a Xhosa grandfather somewhere, and the more we talk about it, and in debates, not debates really, but saying, listen, is there another grandfather besides a Khoi grandfather? It is something that needs to be pushed, because it's dangerous if we think that we are pure and we can go back to that purity. Yes.
I think the key is that we confuse purity and legitimacy to land. So we think the purer we are, the more legitimate claim we have to the land. I think the Khoi people, and as South Africans who do that in general, so the Khoi people are probably struggling with that. They say, but the only way we can get a strong claim is to have purity. But you say, but it's a false purity because you have to construct it in that post-colonial framework, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, Matthew. And I like what you're saying, legitimacy and purity. Our legitimacy doesn't depend on the purity. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
And I think in essence, there are many benefits of being diverse than, I think that's my point of view, than seeing it only in a very narrow one way, because you you get to experience a lot of, a lot of things in being diverse in your nature.
That's it. That's it. Um, and it's disappointing because from the oppressive side, the oppression side, purity was used. You know, eugenics and all that. It was used as a tool, to divide and rule. So why are we still at that stage?
No, exactly. I think it has a strong bearing on, because you often think of like the concept of Israel to, so like how returning our land.
Yeah.
And I think part of why the Khoi activists are so frustrated is that they're actually not part of that conversation too. So because I think we all repeat history in some form. So once we take over with power, we replicate, and we either create the same lager mentality or we created ideas and legitimacy and purity. And I think it's the same. So when Israel later goes on the screen, you find that like the colored voice is not really there, or you find that the Khoi voice is not really there. So I think there's this constant tussle between who I am, like
That's
I said,
it.
and for us in the city, it's also different. It's a compound on that, because we also have an urban identity.
Yeah, that's it. But the other thing also, Matthew, is that by not, you see, it's false kind of enemies that's created.
That's it.
And by not having a kind of a conversation, but not one of like a militaristic. I wanted to say militaristic. If you don't agree with me, I'll fight with you.
Yeah.
But inviting, come, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Come, let's talk about it. Come, I know what you're saying. Come, let's talk about it. And isn't that what we did to get to the democracy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
We talked about it, and we are one of the few nations in this world that did that.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah, we did.
Let's talk about it still. Don't let other discourses come and take that from our hands, disturb that. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
And it's been it has added a big value in terms of how we find ourselves as a society, as a country, because these conversations really started, during that time, that if someone has wronged you, and now you are in a process of negotiating and talking to that person, it was seen as a very, very, new phenomena.
Yeah.
I think what we're not adding value onto is to further, entrench that kind of mentality.
That's it. Yeah.
And I think that the second part that I wanted to also kind of have a conversation with you. You'll find that our conversation is not in one, we're picking on different.
I love that. I love that because, I don't want it to be linear.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that we wanted to talk to you about was around your. I know you don't like these, codes, but in this instance, I will use one code. As an activist, as a cultural activist, as a heritage activist, what has carried you all of these years, as someone who drive these processes in many spaces, a linguist, a cultural activist, a women's rights, and so forth? What has been fundamentally carrying your principle?
I must tell you, I come from a political family. I had a cousin who was on Robben Island. He was under banning orders. So, and my grandmother was also on the paternal side, very active, not active in the way, but saying this is wrong and that is right. And my mother, in her own way, was a sort of a fighter, a struggler. And so I come from such a family. And I come from a family, and my father also would tell, although we were poor and there was a lot of alcohol abuse and all those kinds of things, but who taught us that you respect other people. And there's no difference between you and the next person. So I've got that underpinning. I've got that underpinning, and always wanted to carry on, and to live out that which they taught me. I wanted to show that you can be poor, but with this empathy, taught to you as a child, you can reach, a higher level, but those underpinnings. It doesn't have to be trampling on others. So for me, what pushes me is to all those principles and also what is possible for me as an artist. My family was storytellers. And through those stories, I became aware and conscious, and I became a human being that's looking out at and further on, the fact that there's so much that was hidden from us. My family told me stories, but there was so much more. And I realized, oh my goodness, I have a lot to go and research and write about, like the names of the months, the Februaries. Yeah. Why? How did it come that we became Februaries? And knowing about names that we had before,
maybe Dr.
Matthew?
Ferrus, tell us a little bit about that. Why do you hear like April and January and February? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah. It's because, the slave trade, and they were, when they came here, they were sold, they couldn't pronounce their surnames, or they didn't even bother about surnames. They gave people, when they sold them, they gave them the names of the months they were sold into. Nou is ons Januarie, Februarie, Maart en April. Fortuin, Arendse, Fransman en Gabier. Maar iewers, lank gelede, baie ver van hier, het ons feeste onder 'n ander naam gevier. Yeah. Now you're asking me what pushes me and that. I want my people to know who we are, where we come from, what went on with us. And when I go to a community, I once read, it's from my first book, Ons Kom Vandaan. I once had a book launch in Bonteheuwel. And when I did that poem, you should have seen people's eyes. Because then people recognized themselves and they knew they were not only what they were told they are. Yeah, exactly. There's something else to them. Yeah.
I mean, just by saying it, my people, it fascinates me the way how you use it, the passion that you bring forward once you say my people. Maybe if you can help me in terms of kind of defining that. What do you mean when you say my people? What are we referring to? What are we talking to?
Yeah, but especially people from slave offspring, also the so-called colored people. And we know that's a construct created by the apartheid government. So why I'm writing about who we are as a people. The colonial system, the apartheid system affected our people so much. We have the DOP system, we have this carry on from slavery. We have generations of alcoholics. No wonder that today we struggle, with drug abuse and all that. We struggle with violence. We struggle with gangsterism. And I think it's mostly because people don't know where they come from. They don't know through what their ancestors have been, And if they can realize that, and if they can feel it, And if I can do it for them in the best way possible, with all my heart and all my passion, I am sure I can, bring a change about here and there. And that is what I meant with my people. In Worcester, where I come from, the town that I come from, there's a street called, it's Lesieur Street. Lesieur was one other colonial guy. But people called it Kantienstraat. Kantien is a alcohol bar, it's bars, because in that street there were 21 bars and off sales. And people had to come from the location to go to the town to go shopping and had to cross that street. Many didn't make it to town. A system set up for them. And if I can tell them that story, man, and tell them and say, no, don't let it happen to us again.
So do you think that the DOP system is one of those kind of evils in South Africa that we haven't really explored or unpacked in relation to the fact that you have a street like Lesieur Street, where even now in most rural towns you'll find there's probably more bottle stores than there is a KFC or there is.
Matthew, when they created like a new a suburb or an area, the first thing that would be built there is a liquor store and a church. Oh, and I'm not going to talk about the church. So the intention was give people alcohol, keep them subdued, gehoorzaam, and we must talk about it. Yes, we must talk about it. We must have discussions. Or poets, storytellers, filmmakers, musicians must bring that discourse to the fore.
Thank you very much. That was I could feel the energy, the passion there. And maybe also just to move us a bit into another conversation that we want to have with you, is this idea of a museum being a space. And do you think such a space is a neutral space to have different discourses within it?
Yeah, the fact that you, just after the discussion of the DOP system, and my goodness, but before I get to your question, is that why can't we have a museum that would go and tell you about the laws and what happened with alcohol and people? We can have a small museum like that. Yeah, museums must be a reminder. The underpinning must be a reminder. But also that we lived in 1940, we lived in 1820. But it also became 1953, it also became 2000. So the museum should reflect. A museum is a very necessary space. A museum should reflect past, present, and what do we foresee? The future. The museum can be the place where you can actually come
and
experience and heal.
Yeah.
And heal. And right there, tell yourself, that's going to be my future.
And I think that's an important point, Dr. Ferrus, because I think Ayanda and myself and our colleagues in the museum, in the art department, we always tussle this idea of what is a museum, and falling into the normal traps of what we think a museum must be, especially in relation to your story, I think, with Sarah apartment and the poem. I don't think you understand the impact that you have on the way we think in that way. I think it's really important because you're giving us an alternative to what we think a formal process must be and what it means in relation to museums. So why does that have to be what so quote unquote alternative ways of dealing with heritage? Why is that not the standard? And why do you think that is? Why do you think that we have to search for the good stuff. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely making sense. The thing is, Matthew, unfortunately, we live in a time where museums need money to exist. So there's maybe certain requirements asked from donors and sponsors, but the museum is an entity on its own. That word museum, it's different to a theater, where the same kind of stuff that's in the museum can be played out. It's different than the song being sung. The song gets its origins from the museum. Or the museum gets inspired by the song. Yeah. And of course, the museum should explore the future, not explore the future, but in the museum, I want to make an argument for that. In the museum, it cannot just be anybody that runs a museum. The museum needs researchers. The museum needs activists. The museum, because you're talking about different museums. If I look maybe at museums, the District 6 Museum, okay. We have District 6 Museum, and its focus mainly was on the removal of people and where they've gone to, and the effect that it had, that removal it had on people. That's a fact. If you want to know what happened to people, go to District 6 Museum. Go to District 6 Museum. You get it all there. Even the names of the streets. How painful, but it needs to be there. Okay. And then, once you have that, you've got to ask yourself, because those people have moved to Manenberg, they've moved to Hanover Park. What now? Are we always just going to let people come in and see the street names? What are their lives now?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the question that should be asked. What are the lives now? Are we experiencing the same kind of uprootedness? What have we learned? What did District 6 Museum teach us? That a home belongs to a family. And once a family and its home is uprooted, there's chaos.
Yeah.
And there is consequences with those chaos, as we see now. So that is what the museum should look at. But the museum can look at that. But what did we say? What happens further?
Yeah.
What can the museum offer? Besides that story of the uprootedness and the present. What did people do to survive?
The resilience.
Yes, their resilience. Are we telling the story?
Yeah.
No? The museum is telling that story. So I wanted to say that the museum renews itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same with me as a writer. I cannot always talk about Sarki and I could talk about ons kom vandaan. I need to reinvent myself.
Yeah.
I'm a poet and I read the poem, but now I want to stand on a stage and tell a story.
And it goes back to the question of relevance, isn't it?
That's it, yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely of relevance, because the relevance stems from that underpinning.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
This is what happened. The relevance.
Yeah. And do you think some of the museums should be the space of awareness and also in some form find a way of teaching people not to repeat the atrocities of the past?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you saying that and asking that, because there are many museums around. Oh, I see that museum and I see that museum, but there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening. I think there's no look at the present and at the future.
Yeah.
And so I admire museums that's constantly busy, constantly busy, because you can talk about museums as memory, but you can also talk about museums as healing, spaces of healing. Yeah. And spaces of healing doesn't mean only become aware of the past, but also what are you doing,
The way it connects to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that,
Sure.
huh?
No, that works for us. I mean, these are very, very powerful,
Yeah.
Insights that you are sharing with us, because it helps us also to think deeper about the work that we do and why are we doing the work we do.
Yeah.
Because one of the underpinnings, for instance, my understanding of the District Museum is also about social justice, justices.
Yes.
It just cannot be, about anything else. Sometimes it has to be about justice, and how do we portray that?
Yeah.
Or how do we articulate that? And I think as such, that kind of holds us, that's our center, that's our core, in my understanding as to why we're doing the job.
Yeah, no, definitely. But because then why do you exist?
Yeah.
If it's not about social justice? Because you are portraying the injustice.
Yeah.
You are portraying the injustice. And what is your aim? The bringing about of social justice. Yeah? You're talking about the injustice, bringing about of justice, social justice. It cannot be something else.
Yeah. And maybe on begging on the same, understanding is this whole notion of preservation. Why do you think we want to preserve? What is the add value of preservation? And what does it do in terms of, does it help our society to move or to evolve, not to move, to evolve a society, leading into those ideals that we're referring to of social justices?
Yeah, because, many decades come, and then you have that. In the meantime, you have added more to that of the past that you have. It's a difficult question for me, I must admit.
Yeah.
I was asked the other day from the University of Stellenbosch, which the music department, their music sheets have been stored, and time and age have sort of distorted the page. Is it necessarily the distortion? Is it necessarily a loss?
Yeah.
Is it necessarily a loss, or does it tell us something else as well?
Sure.
And maybe this is going to add on to this one, because we were also, get into this conversation around originality and digitization.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What do you hold dear to?
Yeah.
Do you want to find it? Do you want it into its original value?
Yeah. Do you want
does
to
it make
touch it
any
still?
changes? Yeah.
And because it becomes dangerous to touch it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It becomes dangerous to touch it. Or do you work with, as I said, with that and look at it? Because in that is a story itself.
Yeah. What do you find more comfortable? Maybe that's a very unfair question, but what do you find more comfortable to be working with? What will you lean towards?
Because in our conversation in the car, we were also making reference to artificial intelligence and so forth.
yes,
so it would be nice just to
Yes,
pick your brain in terms of what
Yeah.
what will you kind of find quite comforting or
In
suitable.
the poem that I've written for those people, I've said that maybe it's our own what do we call it? Our own when you keep yourself very high, it's where you don't accept that stuff have. What is the name? What mourning? It's like, are you mourning this? This change, or are you seeing new things in it?
Yeah.
And that is you're seeing new things in it. In all right, it has changed, but it's actually out of our hands also.
Yeah.
Huh? It's out of our hands. It has changed without us. It's out of our hands. It will. So that is what we must accept.
And Dr. Perry, I think this is the thing that gets me so, it's right, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, if we think of our core ancestors, right, and the way in which they engaged with the land, it's very kind of like they were semi-nomadic and they moved around. But the one thing is they never built houses there. Mikey says.
Yes, yeah.
And so an archaeologist is not going to find where Mikey says was, because it was ephemeral by
Decay.
nature, right?
Yeah.
Decay came, that's the word, decay. Yes,
so there's this feeling that in Africa, that is our natural state, that we have a different relationship to eternity in a way. So the eternal nature of things, we're more part of it in a sense. But at the same time, I can't help but think, though, that the problem is, why do we know Jan van Riebeeck and we don't know Krotoa? Is because there's a little statue of him in Adderley Street, and that statue is absolute. It gives us a sense of time, eternal time, until someone takes him down. And I'm not going to put you on the spot to how you feel about taking statues down, or because I know that can be quite controversial. But shouldn't we have a statue of Krotoa then too? Because shouldn't we as Africans then maybe take a little bit of the Europeans in that way to say, but I understand the ephemeral nature and our natural state is more ephemeral and more moving, and we have a longer game, because I think the Mikey says is a longer game. Then eventually that will rust and it will fall apart. But the Mikey says kind of lives in us. My question is, do you think that maybe we should be having statues of Krotoa? Should we be having statues of Harry, the Strandloper, of Doman, so that we can have these heroes in a way, or heroes as references in the same way that a kid can understand Jan van Riebeeck?
I was thinking, what was I? I'm at the age where I forget.
I was rambling. Sorry.
Yeah. So yes, we should have the reminders.
Yeah.
And for me, it is, don't take it off. Don't take it off. He was here.
Yeah.
We cannot do anything about it.
Yeah.
He was here. And if a child walks past and asks, who's that? Then you tell the whole story.
Yeah.
He was here. And, but the child can also ask, and who worked with him? And is there anybody from our people that knew him?
Yeah.
She says, let me take you to Krotoa as well.
Yeah. And I think what is interesting,
storytelling.
But what is interesting about what you are saying are these multitude of narratives that you are bringing on board.
Yeah.
That expands one's imagination and the way people think and building their knowledge.
Yeah.
As opposed to these very narrow, stringent kind of narratives that says it one, which does not sometimes gives a full picture and kind of contextualizes things.
Yeah. The thing is, for me, is you young people at the museum, you must determine how it's gonna, bloom like a flower. We had slavery at the Cape. The slaves built the Cape.
Yeah.
These roads that we're walking on, the cobblestones, the quarry there by Greenpoint, slaves carried those stones from there. What do they give us as a monument? A cut-off tree in Spin Street.
Yeah, with blocks.
Yes, the plug under which the slaves were sold. Nobody knows that the gardens is the plantation where they worked. The museum is where they stayed. Sometimes they were so tired when they came from work. They eat the fish and, I don't know, even the rice. They ate it raw.
No time to cook.
What would happen to a child, a teenager that's about to go and explore the world? And what can it do to a teenager to know that my ancestor, ate fish raw because he or she worked so hard?
And the idea of preservation in that sense makes sense then for me. For instance, I was saying, the interaction that you'll have with that, it's of great value.
Yeah.
For instance, I'm making reference to the cemetery. If you go to Eastern Cape, how they will bury my great-grandfather, it will just be in our same yard.
Yeah.
So my interaction with him will be constant.
Yes.
And then we come to urban areas, then that thing becomes a distant thing.
Yes.
Where now I need to take a car to go connect with.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what we need to move towards is our relationship and interaction with the preservation or whatever we're keeping.
Yeah.
And finding, because once it becomes part of you, then it makes sense why do we keep it.
Yeah.
I think what we struggle with is these things of preservation for what end?
Yeah. Yes. It might be that we are sounding as if we're contradicting ourselves. Preserve and decay, But those kind of practices, it's important, and we just need it to be sustainable. That we can keep on telling the story, bringing the people, bringing the tourists, telling them the story, bringing the teenager that's about to go and explore the world or life. That's it.
Get that rootedness.
Yeah.
And close to this same conversation again is this whole question about repatriation.
Okay, yeah.
Which also we in our corridors, in the museum, we will talk about these things and it because we've got different views around it, and we were making reference, for instance, with repatriation of
Sarah
Bartman, and we were looking at the status of that coming back, where it is now, for what purpose, for what end. Are we still honoring that we stood for? And in that sense, does one then find value in have repatriated, her soul to the homeland?
Yo, it's just loaded.
Very loaded. We apologize.
Yeah,
Sorry.
loaded.
Sorry.
I can only speak of my experience.
Yeah.
You're asking, I'll start with the last part. The repatriation, was it necessary? Yeah, it was. Because if you look at Sarah Bartman's story, if you look at when she died, what Napoleon scientists George Cuvier and Geoffrey Saint-Hilaire did with her. They made a plaster cast of her body. They then dissected it, took out the brain and the genitalia. And Cuvier, the scientist of France, held seminars and wrote books about how that shows that she's not really human.
Yay.
He said in one of the stuff that he said, the missing link between human and ape, as Darwin would call it. Eh? And that fed into the scientific racism of having a hierarchy of races. Yeah? With European or Caucasian right on top and African right down at the bottom. for their purposes of exploitation. So they have the right. So if you are lowest race, I can come and in your country, I can say, you don't know how to do it, you stupid, you almost animal. I will do it. This is now my land. It was based on that.
Yeah.
It was based on that. So that should be told. That should be told. It was necessary so that the French could say, we're sorry.
Yeah.
We're sorry we held it in a museum for so long. But my experience is also with the role that the poem played. People stopping me in the street and saying thank you. Yeah. People crying when I do the poem. And when I tell a story around it. Because, and that is where museums come in.
Sure.
That story was hidden. It was hidden. It was in another museum, and it was told in another way. Now she comes home, and that's why it's necessary. And we tell the real story.
Yeah.
Yeah? We tell the real story. What really happened to her. And what happened to her, we don't want to have it repeated.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
She was a black woman, she was a poor woman, she was a woman. She was sexually exploited. She was exploited economically. She was, it's class, race, and gender. Yeah, all that. And that's why we must have that museum, where her grave is, in Hankie. We must have that museum because too many people don't know the story.
They don't.
Yeah. And those who get to know the story, I can tell you, there are sort of awakenings and healing happening to them. And I tell you, it is not about class here. The poorest and the richest cry.
Now probably not even about race. I think everybody can meet and
Yes.
and hear your story.
Yes, white people cry too. You see? And so that is why she had to be repatriated. But let me tell you a story. When we went to fetch her, Gail Smith, the journalist who went with, she called me, come look here. Went into a room. And there were rows and rows and rows of skeletons hanging on hangers. Small ones, big ones. Whose child? Whose mother, whose father? How did they get there? And they were very upset to find us in there.
Yeah.
Chased us out. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we were contending with was this thing of how do we then treat it once it gets into where it needs to be.
Yeah.
In the case of Sarah
Yeah.
coming to our
Yeah.
country, do we then act the same as the person who took him over, whoever, or do we act differently in terms of how do we relate to her?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we are struggling with, is that the chances are, because of the frameworks and the models that European museum so-called uses, once it comes here, are we not continuing on the same trajectory? What are we doing differently than what they've done in France in this instance?
No, absolutely. We, when she came home, a reference group was formed, and I was on the reference group. And the reference group, and it was formed by government, the reference group had to decide where she was going to be buried, because she had to be buried, because we believe in the burial so that the soul can rest.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Must bury the body so that the soul can rest. Where she's going to be, how she's going to be buried. And that we sorted out. She was buried in Hankie. It's in the district where she came from. Okay. There was a few problems because the site that was the hill that was selected was also the ontspannings gebied, the relaxation for those little townspeople. So they came to stand on the hill and they drank and they, and that.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for them actually, because people thought that the grave is being, defaced or something. There were people who defaced the grave, through paint over it, and that's why it's got the sort of the encircling of it. Anyway, so later on, they decided that, actually President Thabo Mbeki declared it a national heritage site, né?
Yeah,
A national heritage site. So they decided they're going to build the Sarah Baartman Center of Remembrance. Okay, so that again, that people can come and read about her story. Is supposed to be a language laboratory. I know that there is a pond where people can rest their feet into, and on the floor of the pond, part of my poem is written there. Which is great. And it's also the site where artists can make, their art around her. I know that they are busy now reimagining. Yeah, reimagining too. And so we're not doing what the Europeans did.
Yeah.
We are, and that is, one has such a lot to criticize our government about, But there's beautiful things too that's being done.
Yeah.
And people don't, there was
And
corruption.
when credit is due, we should give it.
Yeah, you should give the credit. And the language laboratory, and there's a farm, a grave is on a hilltop, and here's a road, and this farm on this side was donated, and that's where the Sarah Baartman Center of Remembrance is. Yeah, but so people won't cross the road to go to the grave. They'll go through an underpass.
Yo.
Yeah. And on the underpass, the walls would be written all the words that she was mocked with. So you went to the language laboratory, you did this, you put your feet in the pond, and now you're going to the grave, but you're going through the underpass.
Yeah.
And what happens here?
Yeah. It's a full-on experience.
It's a full-on experience. Then you go to the grave, pay your respects, and you come down where there's a herbal garden. Healing. Yeah. I mean, what more beautiful? Eh?
And I think for me that's fascinating, because that's the practice that is very important, that we need to think about, which
emulate. Yes.
Yeah. And I think it takes me back to then my next part to say, out of all these years, what are the new emerging practices have you experienced as a person, in terms of you as a heritage practitioner or a cultural activist? What are the new practices that have taken us into another level as a society, as a country, or as a continent for that matter?
Yeah, I think we
sorry, part of that, were they prescribed to you, or they just evolve and emerge organically as we are moving in your practice?
I am not one that deals a lot with instructions. I don't want to kill my creativity. A lot. I was giving briefs, yes, and I worked with it, but in my own way, like I did with Decay Without Mourning, that poem that I've written. It's just that I did it, and also what is evolving is there's many more people regarding Sarah Baartman. There are so many people more, bewusst, conscious of her and the story, and many more is learning. And the practice is the poem is prescribed in schools.
Yo.
So there's no other way. They can't deny the story. When they teach the poem, they must teach the story. You know. And for my, yes, talking about involvement, né? I first used to just recite the poem. All right, at the school over that. And then there were so many questions. And then I thought, okay, let's tell the story of how I wrote the poem. You know, I wrote the poem when I was in the Netherlands, came home and that, and the French senator saw the poem, and I tell that whole story. And then I recite the poem. And evolving more was, I was invited to a Wereldverhalenfeest in the Netherlands. And the director asked that I tell the story of Sarki. But it had to start with Once Upon a Time. Yeah? So I had to sit and think, once upon a time, there was a country at the most southern tip of Africa. With mountains huge and small, wide open spaces, and thousands of plants and flowers that grew wild like the protea. And in this country lived the Khoikhoi people with their cattle, sheep, and cows. They were nomads. They trekked from place to place, always to look for greener pastures for their animals. They knew the landscape like the palms of their hands. They knew which plants were edible, which plants were poisonous, and which plants could heal. And in this tribe, there was a family with a little girl, so 8 or 9 years old. Sarki Bartman. So that is the involvement for me.
Yeah.
And I know for many other people, also for many artists. And there's a lot of government projects. I mean, the Apartheid Museum and all those other museums. And museums are moving with the time. I was at the prize giving of the National Arts Awards the other day, somewhere in August. And the McGregor Museum in Kimberley, they won a prize. And I think they didn't win the prize for all the old stuff, you know, it's for their evolvement, I think.
Yeah.
Probably. I wasn't in that category that, you know, that judged that. I was in the literary category.
And you think that prescription kind of stifles the evolution of such practice?
It does, definitely. Many times, the prescription, it could come from somebody's own creative thinking, you know, or a committee's own creative thinking. But many times, it just serves a purpose of how do we get the most out of this? And I don't write to ask myself, how do I get the most out of this?
Exactly.
I write, how many people can I reach? How many people can I heal?
Anything
No,
from your
thank
side? And I think for us as District 6 Museum, we also wanted to take stock of what, you know, however you observe our evolution, our growth, our challenges as a museum, and maybe give us that feedback in terms of our practice, our pedagogy, our methodology, and see if it has stood the test of time and if we managed to, you know, cover certain marks in our journey. And in the same vein, kind of think about the evolution and the future in the next coming years of the museum and where we should be, you know, heading as a museum in terms of, you know, bringing about the ideals of social justices within South Africa, within Africa, and the world at large.
I think District 6 Museum have absolutely done that. At first, it was just, you know, all right, here's a museum that commemorate the people. And then I remember it was it's before the 2000s started. They had at the back, there's a room with tiles, people's poems on it.
Yeah.
Then there was that project. Ne?
Yeah.
I remember I've come to take you home. I wrote that.
Yeah.
And now it's got a kind of a bookshop. It's got other kind of things. I think it has, but and I believe you people are going to move forward because you deal with the uprooting of our families, societies, and it's so necessary because the world is not listening. The world is not listening. And you've got to keep on because, you've got to push so that the world can start listening. Not that they're not listening. Not enough people are listening. Or the powers that be is not listening. That's why we're having so many homeless people. We're having societies that haven't got houses. And that's the core for me of District 6 Museum. You know.
And the agenda of displacement.
That is it. Absolutely. That agenda of displacement is what it does. I mean, all over colonialism, especially apartheid, its target was to displace families, to destroy families. If you look at the migrant labor system, where, and the homeland system, where the father had to go work in the mines, but he had to go alone. His wife had to be at home with the children. When he comes back, and he gets only one chance to come back, and when he comes back the end of the year, there is a baby.
Yeah.
Why do you think the other day why do you think we have so many young men displaced up here? Why do you think we have a problem with fathers fulfilling their roles? It's the same with slavery. In slavery, the child that was born between the love of a man and a woman, slaves, was never the possession or of the father and the mother.
Yo.
Belonged to the slave owner.
Yo.
And the slave man could be sold anytime to another farm far away.
Fragmentation.
Don't tell me not to look at the past.
Yeah. I think from my side, I think if you want to add anything, Matthew, is there anything that you want to probably,
I think it's
maybe as a final closing comment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to digest. I think especially the last part that you said, I think it's hard for us sometimes as the younger generation to kind of see it in that way. Because I think for us, we have different challenges that are kind of facing us now.
Yeah.
And how do we connect those current challenges with the past in a way that also doesn't displace us again? And I think it's quite tough. So I think what you just said, I've got to think about that a bit.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Matthew.
you.
But remember, you have Diana Ferrus that you can just call up
Yeah.
and say, let us have some coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be that person.
Yeah.
I want to be that because I realize all the challenge that you young people are going through. And I would want you to just, if it's just one thing from the past, that you can say, okay, those people persevered.
Yeah.
I must. Those people persevered.
And it always amazes me, the resilience. I always, carry this idea of, this resilience that people got them moving all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, but they're
Yeah.
moving. So in my head, I always have this image of, this word, the resilience, that makes me, marvel the way that they survived during those times and how they constantly evolved in all of what you are saying, but still people were moving on. And I think it's a big takeout for us to really think deep about that. And in the midst of thinking about the present and the future, and also connect those dots so that
Yeah.
it will help us not to think negatively about things too, and then we can make better informed decisions in terms of where do we see the future.
Yeah.
And I think what has really kind of what you said, what has been carrying us, for me, closer to it is this thing of what you said, where you grew up, what you were taught, respect formed the basis on on how you interacted and how you work with whatever you had in that moment. I think for me, from my side, and Matthew and District 6 Museum would like to thank you for your time and your sacrifice of, wanting, coming to come and join us and share some of these experiences with us. And I think more time we spend talking. People don't talk, so let's talk. That's one of the songs of Stimela during pre-94, post-94. So they had this nice song, which I think more and more, if we can get to such practices, it will make us stronger as people, as your reference, as our people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
It is my absolutely pleasure. Thank you for the wonderful way in which you conducted the interview and allowing me free rein, because I might, here and there just gone over the fence. So thank you for that.
No,
and as young people, I want to tell you that I admire what you do. I'm extremely happy that you're doing this kind of work. But remember that you can lean on one or two shoulders when it becomes too much. I am aware of all the struggles that you guys face. Right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.